right. Are we ready? Okay, I will now open the Estacada City Council workshop on marijuana dispensaries. This is discussion. There'll be no outside comment during this. This is just for us to go through it. We're not making a motion tonight, but we are going to have a discussion on this very subject and decide how we want to proceed. So I know that Katie has brought a lot of material on this very subject. She's been fighting it for a long time. So I'm going to open the floor to her to present this information to all of us. So in that, Katie, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I just a quick personal story. I don't know if a lot of you know, but my mom actually tried to open a retail marijuana establishment here in Estacada in 2016 or 17. And at the time we were looking at a spot near the Cazadero restaurant in that little strip mall. And at the time it was deemed that that was not an appropriate place to have retail marijuana because there was a plan of having a park within 1,000 feet of it. Since then, I've actually heard quite a few people bring up that that would be a great place to have retail marijuana. So this is an issue that is relatively personal to me. And I just wanted to give some of that back history as to why it means as much to me as it does. Since then, nobody has been successfully able to open a marijuana retail store here in Estacada because the way that our code is written, it might as well say you can sell marijuana retail on every day except for a day that ends in Y. And that's literally how it reads when you're looking at, well, yeah, you can sell marijuana in Estacada, but not in this zone or this zone or this zone or this zone. In fact, the only area, if you look at the map that I provided to everybody, the only area that we currently allow it as an outright use is in the dark red right there above Timber Park, right adjacent to Timber Park. That being said, I have quite a few different ideas of how we can compromise to open it up more to different areas, not all areas. As you can see from the map, it's already prohibited in a lot of areas because of the way that state law is already written. So the map that I provided to the people in this room have the zones that are already prohibited crossed out. So the ones that are left open are the ones that we have the potential of actually discussing how we can open up this kind of a business in those zones. That being said, I did provide a handout that is actually two different handouts. The first one is a quick, simple reminder to everybody. Back in 2014, when marijuana was legalized in the state of Oregon, I have provided precinct results of that vote from all of the precincts in the city limits and adjacent to city limits, maybe even a couple of others just beyond adjacent, but we would still consider those people Estacadians. The voter record back in 2014 when it was legalized, in 2014, 2,761 total people in our area voted to legalize it as compared to 2,527 people who said no. That is a difference of 234 people. So it was just as polarizing in 2014 as it is today. But we still had the majority of people in our area vote to legalize it even 7 years ago. The second thing that I have provided is just some simple pie charts. The green little slices are the people who responded to our surveys, whether it be online or on paper or in the open house. The green are people who responded positively. The red are positively, what I mean is to allow marijuana retail in our city. The red is people who responded negatively to that. But then the yellow represents all of the other registered voters in our city. Right now, today, we have 3,229 registered voters. And whether it be positive or negative, we had the pleasure of hearing from 300 something. So that being said, when we have this discussion, I want us to remember that we are trying to represent everyone, the whole pie, even the people who really probably, they don't care. And they're probably at home wondering why we're even having this debate. This isn't a debate about whether or not it should be allowed in Estacada. It is allowed in Estacada. Now we actually have to determine where we're going to allow it, because right now the answer is not a lot of places. So that being said, that is what I wanted to point out to you guys. I did also bring this just in case anyone wanted to learn about some of the other barriers that already exist for marijuana retail stores, because they have a lot of federal regulations as well as state regulations, as well as county regulations. And there's a lot that they already have to go through. And we as a city, our municipal code is making it even harder for them. The last thing that I brought with me, and I didn't provide copies of this, but I'm happy to give you copies of it if you want it at all, is the current local opt-out list, which I believe is maybe a little outdated in the OLCC website. I just wanted to point something out from the OLCC opt-out list. Prior to December 27th, 2015, cities and counties could implement local bans if 55% or more of voters in their jurisdiction voted against Measure 91 without referring the ordinance to voters. Now, our city to our, I guess that would be East Sandy, they did refer it to the voters, and the voters decided to outright ban marijuana sales within their city. That being said, Estacada hasn't done that. And if we ever wanted to do that, we'd have to go to the people. But based on the vote that they put in 2014, I don't think that people would vote to ban it, which to me says that people want access. They want access to their medicine, whether it be for medical purposes or even recreation purposes. People want to have access to it, and it is our job to meet that need and give them the access. Now, just because we say we're okay with having a marijuana retail store in a certain tax lot, just because we say it's okay for that to happen does not mean that tomorrow a store is going to open there. And I just want everyone to remember that we are trying to speak for everyone, not the few, but the all, and everyone should have access. And that is what I am trying to help. So,
If I may,
yes.
I love your argument. I think you did a great job putting all the information together, and I think it falls true. I do. What I would like us to consider, though, in this is that we do based on population. Right now, I don't want 20 of them coming in tomorrow because they can. What I'd like us to focus on is maybe look at it like we look at our liquor store. We have close to what, 4,500 realistically? So 5,000, let's make a marker. Every 5,000, let's consider putting another one in, base it on our population. How many do we really need? So if we're going to do this and we're going to do it right, let's do what you said. Let's open it up. Let's back off on the 1,000 feet from the church idea, because we know we have lots of properties out there that we can accommodate this, but base it on the population itself. So we don't get so many of them. I don't want to be like one of the coastal spots that I've seen down there where there's like 20 or 30 in a city. Half of them aren't even registered. It's ridiculous. So what I would hope that we'd be more, conscious of that, going forward with this. And it's just a thought. I don't know. I mean, you probably know better than me. But
I mean, I see the argument on both sides.
Sure.
Some of the nice things about having competition is that you're not only going to be providing access, but in a lot of cases of competition, you're providing higher quality access somewhere else, where someone else actually might be selling higher quality product or offering more affordable prices or increased cleanliness, because a lot of times cleanliness of marijuana retail store is a major factor for where people go to shop. And if we say only one shop can open, and the first person that happens to open is someone who's dirty and maybe not trustworthy, and you kind of get a weird feeling going into there, you don't really want that person to be the one that stays in business.
well, I would hope we'd have guidelines on that before we'd allow somebody. Like
Yes,
that. We'd take a
absolutely.
look at
Always
that top
guidelines,
50.
but at the same time, a lot of times in the free market and capitalism, the person who is providing the better service, who whether it be safer service, more cleanly service, more affordable service, maybe that person is the one that ends up winning out, and the other person ends up having to close up shop because it's not good business. But if that person happens to be the only person in town, then we're going to keep them in business. So maybe having some amount of competition is also
And we
healthy
can
for
take
a
look at
market.
Places like Malala, for instance, that's 10,000 people and they have two.
And exactly, and you
Yeah,
can
and I
easily solve that
understand that,
issue
yeah.
by saying, hey, why don't we restrict how many can be within a certain area? So if you wanted to say, we can't have any within, 500 feet of each other, I think 1,000 might be a little excessive given the size of our town. But again, there's only so many places that somewhere can go here.
I'm with you on the first part. We'll have to talk about it.
But that's an easy way to restrict it.
Joel.
I want to speak to a variety of different things that was my connection is unstable. That Katie had mentioned to you. First of all, recent, and we're going to say recent, within the last several months, we had surveys, we had open houses, we had everything go out to people. Those numbers and almost 2 to 1 showed that they didn't want changes. So those numbers are there. We can post them online. Everybody's second
2 to
part.
1. It was 50-50.
Yeah,
It was high when you look at them all together. I remember the report. I was looking for the thing from Denise to actually give you numbers. I couldn't find it. I'm still digging for it, waiting for things to update. But like I said, my email's having issues, so I'm able to find it right now. But the second part of that is people move, change, everything changes over time. The numbers you're talking about when they voted in 2016, that may not be the same amount of people here. What we do have is the act of people that came out and spoke in regards to it, and they didn't want things to change. Now, I do agree with a compromise. We're always looking for a compromise. And I agree with Mayor Drinkwine's proposal of limiting the amount in the city to, like one, I would say maybe 1 per 10,000, what I would go for in order to try to compromise with the people that were saying they don't want one to the people that are looking for one. But I think the key thing that they were definitely putting out there in the biggest part of it is they don't want it downtown. So that's what I heard the most out of everybody is they don't want a retail marijuana store on a downtown Broadway area. They want it somewhere outside of the city. So if we can find the compromise to put one in an area outside of the downtown core area, and downtown core means several blocks in all directions, then I think we'll be at least meeting the spirit of what people were trying to say. Also, we should make sure that if one can't be put on safe pathways to school. So we don't want our kids walking by a marijuana store every single day on there because it's influence. Third thing I'd like to bring up is, Katie, you identified that you have a personal connection to this and a personal influence on it. Will you be recusing yourself from the vote when it comes to city council?
No, because neither myself nor any of my immediate household members benefit financially from this at all whatsoever. And in fact, since then, my mom has gotten into a separate business venture or two that have nothing to do with this industry. This is solely of personal interest. Nothing bad is going on here. There's no insider trading or nothing. I'm not giving money to anyone that I have any association with. I am simply trying to change the city charter to allow something, just as I would, because I like to have a drink every so often, and I give the liquor store their liquor license once a year. So no, this is no difference, and I will not be recusing myself of anything to do with this issue.
Okay, just wanted that on record. Thanks.
Okay. Paul, did you have something? I think you had, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I did. The discussion of the number of dispensaries that we could have in the downtown area. It seems like we discussed that another time, and it might have been Matt or somebody had said that there could be some legal restrictions on the number of places that we can put in the downtown area. So that'd be something that we keep in mind as well too. And I saw in the write-up that currently, is it that there's 1,000 feet? We can't have one within 1,000 feet of each other. Is that an Estacada rule, a city rule, or is that a state rule?
It used to be a state rule that is no longer a state rule.
Is there 500 feet with the state, do you know, or is it that one's just taken out?
It's just taken out.
Okay.
Jerry, I know you got something.
Oh, Justin's got his hand up.
Oh, okay, Justin.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So I would like to, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but speaking of the numbers and when it came to the original vote for all this to pass, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if it was a no vote at the time, then we would not get any of the tax benefits. And I think that's true. And I think that you have to realize too that a lot of people said yes to it, knowing that we have restrictions that are above what the state requires, and they felt comfortable with that. And they also wanted to reap the rewards to say yes. So I think that there is everybody that I talk to, including myself, I was under the impression that yes, we're going to reap tax benefits from this and we could potentially pay for things. And hey, why not? And look, we have good restrictions. And I think something that kind of blows my mind is just seeing all the money in this weed. There are locations that are okay. And yes, there's not a building there, but somebody could have came in and built a building and put a dispensary, and nobody chose to do that. And it makes me really nervous. I agree with you, Mayor. I like the idea of if we're actually gonna do this, that we don't need 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And I also agree with Joel on this. We don't want it in our downtown core, or that's my feeling in general from what I've heard from people. Um, so again, correct me if I'm wrong. I could have swore that I read, and when I talked to people about this, there was definitely a tax benefit of just saying yes. And if we were to say no, then we wouldn't get a slice of the pie kind of a thing. I mean, I could be wrong there, so I'm not 100%, but I mean, that's kind of my 2 cents on this.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that. Jerry.
Okay, so I thought about it and I do have something to say. So my issue with only allowing one location, if one retail store, is I don't believe there's any regulations on what they charge, and I think that if we just allow one, that gives them a monopoly in Estacada, and I think that that we would be doing a disservice to the people that actually want it here if we only allowed one. Just knowing how people already feel about certain companies that are here that there is only one of in the city of Estacada, I think that only allowing one gives that company a monopoly, and I don't believe there's any regulations on pricing and stuff. So there's just too much of a chance for gouging, I guess.
Okay. Charity, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. So I really do appreciate all the work that you went through to put all this together, Councilor Dunsmere. And I know that people have a very, it is very hot and cold, black and white with this issue, it seems like, and have strong feelings about it. Marijuana is legalized here and it's here to stay. Me personally, but I have to represent my constituents. Me personally, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't want it here, and I wouldn't even want a liquor store here. I mean, one of the reasons we moved to Estacada was because we didn't have dispensaries here, and we didn't have strip clubs, and we still don't. Not that, hey, you do you. I'm not judging you, but these are my personal opinions. With that said, I'm looking at the map, and I know we've had plenty of discussions about this. And from what I've heard from people talking to me, they do not want it in the downtown area. This is something we've kind of all talked about and agreed upon. I know when I drive into Molalla, I see it right there on the side of the highway, 211, as I'm going out. And I'm like, yep. I mean, it just, it still has a stigma around it. And it's still a very cash-based it's still very much a cash-based system. And with cash-based systems, there comes increased crime. Now, no, they're not, dispensing crack or meth or whatever, but it does attract a certain type of customer at times. So I'm very hesitant to put it, anywhere near the downtown area, anywhere near our schools. Just from what I've heard, again, my heart goes out to people who are using this for medicinal purposes, things like that. I totally get it. I support that. I did a search. There's a dispensary, the one off of the highway. I mean, they even deliver to your house. So as you're going out to Clackamas, Chalice, they even deliver to your house. So, I mean, there is competition. It's not down the street and around the corner, but we do have a lot of dispensaries. There's that one in Boring. It's over by my in-laws, and I mean, they're around. So I get wanting to put a couple in for competition. I would have to look at the numbers, Mr. Mayor, as far as, how many per 1,000 people or whatever, but this is one of those issues where I'm probably going to be the biggest stick in the mud on this council. And so I will, those are my feelings. I like to just, if we're going to put one, it would be out in industrial or something like that. And I know that's not super visible for people, but that's kind of what I would like to see and what I've heard from my constituents. So,
Thank you, Charity, for
Yeah.
that. Katie?
All right, couple of things have been said, so I'm going to try to hit all of them. Counselor Gates said something about having plots of land that have already been qualified for someone to come in and open it. Yeah, there might not be anything on that spit of land. One of the other barriers I do want to remind everybody of is that because it is still federally illegal, there can be no federal funding, which means it can't have a mortgage out on it because mortgages are federally insured. So any person who's going to come in and buy a piece of land is going to have to own that land outright, develop it without taking out any loans. That's including hooking up utilities, power, water, sewer, all of it, putting in a parking lot, building the building itself, and then starting their cannabis business. And especially with the cost of construction in the last few years, I'm sure anyone can ascertain that doesn't pencil out. The next thing I heard someone say, I keep hearing people talk about the downtown. What I am learning after talking with lots of people and listening to lots of people, especially some town halls that I've listened to, most people are under the impression that Broadway and Main are downtown. That's mostly downtown. But I've had a lot of people actually say, well, why can't it go near the liquor store? Well, I agree with that point. Why can't it go near the liquor store when we're going to talk about sins? Let's put them all in the same spot. I mean, my kids live within a block of the liquor store, technically. I live down in that neighborhood. Doesn't seem to affect my life, and I can't imagine another business of similar nature would affect it that much either. That being said, that is still technically downtown. So I mean, really, I have no problems with saying in our downtown, we do not want to see it on Broadway or on Main. I have no problems adding that in because that's what most Estacadians and visitors associate with our downtown core. The other thing that I wanted to touch base on was the industrial park. So the industrial park, it is actually a prohibited use to have marijuana retail in there. We already currently have marijuana allowed to, let me see, I've got the municipal code with me actually. And let me see. Where did it go? Well, basically it's, here we go. Marijuana production, marijuana processing, and marijuana wholesaling regulated by the EMC 16-65 or 16.65. Those are outright permitted in our industrial zone. And really our industrial park is not set up to accommodate the amount of car traffic that you would see from all of the customers coming in if that was our only store in town, especially. But even, think about it, all of the people coming in to buy a product thinking that they're, driving up to basically a strip mall are having to navigate around all of these semi trucks and big warehouses. And I mean, really, is that the most appropriate place to have retail, is where they also have production, processing, and wholesaling? And in addition to all of the other industries that we have at the industrial park, we've got lumber, we've got steel, we've got other metals, we've got people coming in with their, storage. We have lots of other businesses going on in there. Do you really want to have all of the people going in from marijuana retail go into the industrial park? Like I said, when all the other stuff is already going on in there. So that being said, it's not allowed. The marijuana retail is not currently allowed in the industrial park. And I don't even really think that it would be appropriate for us to change that. But it is currently not allowed. Marijuana retail is prohibited use right there. 16.39.035, letter C. So prohibited use, and it's, so I think we should be focusing on all of the other areas, to be honest.
Joe?
A couple things based on what Katie said there, and some previous statements. First of all, with the industrial park, what the current ordinance says, that's a quick motion and a vote to fix that. So that's not the issue. As far as anything else out there, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. There's yes, but there's also a lot of stuff going on in our downtown area just as much. People drive out there all the time. They go out there, they drop off and get into their storage unit. There's places to visit Medallion, and all the other businesses have walk-in places out there to go get stuff. So people moving around and driving vehicles out there, and there's not as much traffic as you would say to be out there. I've been out there tons of times, and I think lots of people have. So I think you're making a bigger deal than that it really is. So, so I think it's definitely a doable thing in the park. Now, as far as paying for it, yes, the federal, you can't go get a loan at a bank, but I did some research, and there's actually a lot of other places that have actually done alternative funding sources to put in these marijuana shops without having to go through federal funding. There's investors, crowdfunding, family loans, things like that. There's a lot of things that actually people do, including taking second mortgages on their house to do these. So there's lots of funding sources out there for it. So again, not an issue. You just have to be creative with it. So as far as buying your land and putting all that there, it's definitely doable for someone who really wants to put something in on it. Yes, we need to change the law on there, but putting something in around the downtown area, specifically, we'll talk right, let's say right next door to the liquor store. Well, when you're walking by the liquor store, you don't smell it. The liquor store doesn't attract higher crime. With these marijuana stores, you do smell it. If you want to see what I'm talking about, drive around Portland and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Second part is the crime is that Councillor Dunsmuir, not Dunsmuir, I'm sorry, Councillor Hughes had mentioned. It is a cash-based business. It is a more dangerous business. It does attract a certain kind of crowd at certain times. So not everybody that goes there is that way. I want to be very clear about that, but it does tend to attract that. And there's police reports and crime reports to back that up. So by sticking that in our downtown core, we potentially involve more crime. We already have an issue with crime of people kicking in doors and stealing from our pizza area. And we're already understaffed for our law enforcement. So putting something in our downtown area with a lot more targets is already an issue. And where we have families that are only 2 blocks away sometimes could potentially be an issue. And again, yes, there is the smell that you don't get from the liquor store. So that's kind of the key things I wanted to point out there.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Katie?
First of all, you don't smell the product. There's actually a lot of regulation about how they have massive measures that they take. These stores take measures to make sure that the smell doesn't travel outside of their store. So the fact that, you saying that you can smell it is just not true. But when I walk near the liquor store and I look through the window, I actually see the product there. When you go to a marijuana retail store and you look in the window, most of the time you see a blurred out glass. You don't see the product at all. You don't even see who's in there. You have to actually walk into the door where you then present your ID to someone before you ever even get to see the product. So that being said, you know, when we talk about it being in your face, the liquor store is in your face. Marijuana retail is not in your face. That being said, though, I would love to see the statistics that you guys can provide to me about crime rates increasing, especially in areas like Molalla, very similar city to us in terms of culture and size and things like that. And I would love to see how the crime rates are actually affected, because in the research I have done, the crime rate is more coincidental of the area that they happen to be in and not actually anything related to the store itself. So that being said, wouldn't our town benefit from having a city somewhere in the downtown core that had the best security system? Because I'll tell you what, these retail marijuana stores, they spend some real money on their security cameras. And a lot of them, in addition to their security cameras, also will hire outside security to actually monitor the outside of the building when there's nobody there. So that being said, wouldn't it be really, really, really cool if we actually had a business come into our downtown who was willing to invest that kind of money into a security system infrastructure that might be able to benefit the other businesses that are downtown who have someone looking out for their businesses? And if for some reason something did happen, we'd actually have a security camera that could catch something like a license plate in the dark on camera.
Going through some of the comments today, reading all of those, and there were quite a few. I thank everyone took the time to comment on the pros and the cons of this. But somebody did mention that if we were to do one, wouldn't it be safer to have it more in the downtown area where there's a presence of people around than in a more rural area where something could happen unseen, and you know, there wouldn't be any other people around to witness it. So I think that's a pretty good point there. I also wanted to take a step back. What we're talking about here is reducing some restrictions that the city has imposed or put in a few years back. The restrictions are, per the state, we cannot have a marijuana dispensary within 1,000 feet of a school. That's not changing. And in many comments in here, we're talking about, don't put these next to the school. We don't want them next to the school. That's not even on the table. We're not looking to put anything near a school. What we're looking about, what the city put in, was restrictions they added a park 1,000 feet within a park and 1,000 feet within a church. And that's what we're talking about here, either removing those or reducing those restrictions. There's nothing that we're going to do today, or throughout this process, that's going to put a dispensary near a school, because the state already has those restrictions. We can't go against those. When I started looking into this process, I thought it'd be a slam dunk. I thought people would be like, sure, I don't care anymore. And I was that way. But after reading comments, after seeing the vote, I do realize it's a polarizing subject still. And I think we do need to take some caution. I'm open to compromise to see what we can do. But I think this is a good process that we're taking to talk this through and make the considerations that we're doing. I'm definitely open to compromise. The results, I think Councilor Lickey, you'd said 2-1. No, the online ones, or the totals, 142 said yes for keep the restrictions in place, or should Estacada have more restrictive laws than the state? Yes, 142, no, 137. So that's hardly 2-1 there. And then even if you break down, should the marijuana dispensary be 1,000 feet from any place that children congregate regularly? 217, keep it as is. If you add up all the other ones that allow for compromise, that's 145, 217 to 145. Should marijuana dispensaries be 1,000 feet from the church? 182 people said leave it as it is. 180 people were open to compromise on that one. And then from a sports field, 195 people said yes, keep it as it is. 150 people were open to compromise. And then a park, 197 people said keep it as it is. 151 said that they would be open to compromise on that. So I think there's room for compromise here, and I'm looking forward to discussion towards that.
I just want to applaud your quick addition of all those other numbers.
Thank you for finding that and getting those numbers out.
Yeah, and I think I think we've all come to the conclusion, you're not going to stop marijuana, all right? It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. I don't always agree with things that happen. It's the way it is. But we're all here and we have to make a decision based upon that. And I stand behind the law, and the law states that marijuana is legal. So I think, as Paul said, we're going to go over the details of how this fits into everything. I think that's inevitable, but we have to accept the fact that it's changed and it's legal. So I don't think that's an argument here that we can have anymore. I think what we really need to focus on now is just, staff is looking for a motion. Is there some kind of thing that you want us to do to take this forward from this point? I mean, what exactly do you want the wording to be?
It's just a workshop, yeah.
So we were not making any motions.
Well, I know that, but I
Okay.
mean, something to
Kind of
advise staff. I mean, what is it you would,
Well,
Yeah,
can I
some of the
start?
questions like that I've kind of pulled out of your discussion is, could it be allowed in M1, light manufacturing? In light industrial, could it be allowed there? We could look into that because I'm not confident that it could be, but we'll look at that. Could it be in part of the downtown zone, but not on Broadway or Main? We could bring back information on that. Crime rates from a comparable city like Malala. Could we
Sure.
dig into that a little bit? I mean,
and I
what
think
other
those are
kind of?
very good things to bring forward. Jerry, I'm going to let Jerry speak real quick here because he had his hand up before we went into this. Jerry, go ahead.
So yeah, I just wanted to speak up basically on what she was just saying. I believe Melanie, I can't really tell because I can't see her. So at the beginning of this, I was completely against having it in the downtown core. Talking to people, weighing it all out, gathering all the information that I could. I landed on, I don't want it on Main and Broadway. And at one point I didn't want it on 2nd Avenue either. Or is it 2nd Avenue downtown?
Yep,
Whatever,
Yeah.
it is.
2nd.
Mhm.
I didn't want it on those 3 streets because those are main thoroughfares for kids walking to school. But then having a conversation a couple nights ago, I came to the realization that 2nd, there is a gun store on 2nd. So not allowing a marijuana shop on 2nd doesn't really make as much sense to me anymore. But I'm still a stickler for, I don't want it on Main and Broadway, but it's going to happen. It's coming. There's nothing we can do about it. It's going to happen. So, as long I'm cool with it wherever it is, as long as it's not on Main or Broadway. So that's my 2 cents.
Great, thank you, Jerry. Katie?
Currently, the marijuana retailing is under prohibited uses for the riverfront commercial zone, which on the map is the dark green one. We all know it is where the Forest Service building is. I would like to propose that we as a council also discuss moving that from a prohibited use to at least conditional, if not a permitted outright use. I would like us to have that discussion as a council as well, especially if we're going to end up bringing it to a vote. But just, I want to clarify something that Councilor Strobel said. Yes, you're absolutely right. We are talking about all of the regulations that Estacada has, including the more restrictive, can't have it within 1,000 feet of schools, parks, and churches, which of course the schools were never going to change, but the parks and the churches, that's what we're looking at. But in addition to that, our zones, our individual zones, the ones that I have not crossed out on the map right there, all say something along the lines of retail marijuana is prohibited in these zones. Right now, the only one that it is not outright prohibited in is that dark red one. Literally all of the other zones though, it is in our zones as being prohibited. So in addition to removing the restrictions of 1,000 feet of churches and parks, we would also have to consider reopening some of these zones to allow it at least as a conditional use, if not an outright use. And if we were to talk about putting it in the downtown district, my encouragement would be that we move it from prohibited to conditional, so that someone who had an idea of opening a store would not be able to do that without presenting the idea to the council first. Am I correct when I say that with conditional uses?
I think, does it go to just planning commission or does it?
It just goes to planning
But I
commission?
think it has to get noticed. Okay, where's our planner? But I think it has to get noticed if it's a conditional use, so people in the vicinity would know that it's happening and be able to speak up about it.
Okay,
And also when you're talking about making changes in chapter 16, it's actually more than just a vote. Because it's the land use chapter, and
Mhm.
so it has to go through the state. So it's a kind of a slow process, and there's more public hearings and.
So we'd have to go through that additional step too.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the only thing that we would be doing, we actually wouldn't be making any changes.
Right. So if you're interested in like looking at making more changes, then we probably should come back at a council meeting with some of these answers of what could be, what couldn't be. And then you could decide if you really want to move forward with that.
I did notice it's actually not listed as a prohibited use, but it's not listed as an anything type of use in the outdoor commercial. Right now, that's the only one that it's not prohibited specifically in the zone. But all the other ones, it's an outright prohibited use. So we'd have to change that too.
Well,
Yeah, going back to Melanie's list of things to follow up on. I think another one I didn't hear, but how many dispensaries can we have in an area?
Right, could we, like, the question would be, could we limit the number, or would we,
question would be, can we limit it based upon the population of Estacada? That was
That-
the.
okay, could it be limited based on population, could the number of dispensaries?
Mhm.
And then was that kind of what you were talking
Yeah.
about? Or-
Yep,
Okay,
yep, that's it.
okay.
And then, was that the only question you had there?
Yeah.
Okay, Joel, go ahead.
Hey, sorry, my computer crashed, and so I missed about 5 minutes. We just submitting questions to the city staff to come back with answers. What we're doing it now, or what I missed in the last 5 minutes?
I think it's just direction. We're giving city staff a direction to go in with this, to bring it back to us, to open this up and get some of these things figured out. So that's really what we're looking at right now.
Okay. Also, I did want to, I don't know if you heard me, Councilor Strobel, but thank you for pulling those numbers out. That it looks like 57, to round it up, 57% said they don't want to see change, and 43% said that they are open to compromise. So that's what the numbers there that you gave represented. So like I said in the beginning, I'm open to compromise to find something, but I also want to respect what the majority has identified, and that is that the majority has identified they do not want it in the downtown core. I think most of us have said that. So I think that's whatever we do needs to make sure that that is a core focus of that, is not getting in the downtown core. As far as reviewing other, looking forward to see what the staff has said, if we do have a legal position to limit the amount of population, and to discuss that one, because I think that's also another thing concern that many people had, is we don't want a whole bunch of the marijuana dispensaries in the city. Now, as far as competition, there is competition because there is delivery options and everything else. That's going to automatically bring competition to the city, and it's going to cause them to, control the pricing somewhat. So, and people do have options to go other places. So if the price is too high in the city, they just simply make a phone call, it comes to them, or they just get it on there when they're out of town. So now my compromise is, yes, let's find a solution that works we can get one in town, but I want to make sure that we are representing and doing what the majority of the people have said in their surveys, that we do not want in the downtown core of the area. Also, it's been said that it doesn't want it anywhere near the schools. I've heard a lot about not having it near churches too. But also the biggest one I heard is safe routes. So if kids are walking in that direction to go to school, it shouldn't be allowed anywhere that it can be on that route. So that's another thing to consider as well. And I think that's what I ought to say.
And I'm in agreement with some of what you said, but the problem I have is when you say that you don't want it anywhere where kids are going to walk to school, that's kind of ridiculous, because they walk from every direction.
Safe routes, like primary considered routes. Like, for example, we use Lakeshore, for example. There's two crosswalks that they would be using to come across, and that route would take them straight up Broadway and then over to Main and up to school that way.
So you're talking the downtown still.
I'm just using that as an example. Yeah, obviously they're not going to put one in the middle of a residential area, and we can't get it near the schools. But safe routes, basically primary routes, that's what they consider when you talk about safe routes. Primary routes kids take to school, where the majority of them walk them, versus not having to get anywhere. So there's safe routes kids take from Lakeshore example up to the school. Now, they're gonna come from all sorts of different directions, and a lot of it's bus. So we can't get them with one or two type of kids are walking that direction, but their primary route is what I'm talking about, so.
The bus comes down to Lakeshore. Hey, if you know any kids still walking to the school from Lakeshore, let me know and I'll get their bus driver to go and pick them up, because there is a bus that goes down to Lakeshore. And we shouldn't have any kids walking to school from Lakeshore because all the schools are way up that way. And we are federally reimbursed to have our school buses go and pick those kids up because they are outside of 1 mile from the schools. Just saying. My kids live on Lakeshore and have a bus that comes and picks them up, so I know. But what you're talking about is in residential zones already. And we don't, and the state doesn't allow it in residential zones already.
I'm just sharing what the people have told me, and I'm giving you the example, so take it as you want.
Thank you, Joe. Jerry, go ahead.
I just want everybody to realize that the surveys and the town hall, that was less than 10% of the population that spoke out. So, you know, I've talked to a lot of people that did not attend the town hall, did not do any surveys. And I think the majority is a little bit more compromised than it is to keep it the same. Just, you know, from my perspective, you know, the majority of the people that I've talked to, it's been some compromise, not complete compromise, but some compromise, more than just keep the restrictions the same.
All right. Very well. I think we've beat that back and forth, and that pretty much answers all the questions. And do you have some directives that you kind of got from this that you can head forward with this? Do you think you feel comfortable with what we've come up with right
I
here?
think so. I think what we would share with Denise is that it sounds like compromise is kind of the way we're going.
Mhm.
So probably looking at ways to reduce the restrictions that the city has imposed. And what are some options for doing that? What zones could they go in? Could they go in part of a zone, but not in another part? Could we limit the number of, you know, what kind of tools can we use to lessen the restrictions, but still maintain some control over
That's right.
what goes on in the community?
That's good, Katie. You got something else you want
I just wanted to point out, actually, in our downtown zone already, we've got some great verbiage for other types of businesses that say things like mini warehouse, except not within 100 feet of Broadway Street. And I think if we just use verbiage like that, where, you know, retail marijuana could be a conditional use, except not within 100 feet of Broadway or Main. I mean, I think that's a really great compromise, and and we've got verbiage like that for other businesses already too. So.
Yep.
I just wanted to point out that that's, you know, the verbiage is there. It's, super easy. And I would love to see what we can come up with.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with that. I've seen the clock reaching the 8 o'clock hour, and we've had a lot of meetings lately. I would hope that we're coming to an end to this. So if anybody has any more questions, let's get those in right now. And if not, you have your marching orders. And
Do we need to start planning some land use public hearings then as well, especially if we're planning on changing certain ordinances within chapter 16?
Those will be coming up. So probably at your next council meeting, Denise would be bringing back options to you. I'm not exactly sure how that process will go.
Yeah,
So
it would be after you guys make the motion to approve.
in a
And we would
regular
get the
meeting.
ordinance ready and schedule it.
Mhm.
all right,
Awesome.
great. All right, thank you, staff, for making it out here to get us on track. We appreciate you.
Great discussion. Thank
Yeah,
you
I
for
think there was a
all
lot of good discussion there, and that's always good. And we appreciate the few who came out tonight to be a part of this process. You guys you're doing the work. I mean, you're doing what the people have voted. They said they want this. It's legal now. We're trying to get through this in one piece. I know there's a lot of controversy across the board. There usually is. But I'm confident that we will make the right decisions and put this in order. So thank you. And I appreciate it. And I will close this workshop.